All right, hello everyone. I believe this is the last talk, and as you very nicely already presented, I will try to answer one question that I think every company, every platform, every online platform out there is trying to understand and get a good overview of, and that is how to keep your users and keep engaging them throughout their life cycle. A lot has been said about it. It's not a new topic. It's been around for as long as the internet has been and platforms on the internet. But I'll try to kind of give a few examples of how very advanced data models and organizations can really bring apps and platforms to the next level. Well, here we go. Sorry. Okay, yeah, a little bit about myself. NOAM AUERBACH. I'm the head of growth at YEAY Berlin. YEAY is a platform for teenagers to buy and sell products with videos. I'm also a growth consultant. And as I said, my main topics are onboarding, data and retention, engagement, and notifications that we just talked about a little bit. We'll come back to it. And please feel free to contact me at noamauerbach@gmail.com. First, we'll talk a little bit about the problem. We'll try to define and isolate it, what and how to tackle it. Then we'll look at how to onboard users and what are possible new ideas to tackle these engagements and user retention. And then I'll talk a little bit. The main two topics here are retention and engagement, the first two. But I wanted to give a little note to talk a little bit about organization, how to structure your organization, seeing there are so many managers in the audience, in order to facilitate growth. How do you put your teams and people in the best place and in the best structure in order to bring them, to bring your app to where it should be? And then summary, and let's talk. So, the problem to start with. Most users don't find your app useful. If you're not Facebook, most chances that your retention rate on day one, that means user comes in on day 0 and leaves on day 1, is around 20–30% if you're lucky. A lot of apps see even lower rates than that. Why is that? Your app is not useful to them. That there's not a lot to do except for acquisition. The second point, and that I see a lot as my work as a consultant, users can't find content. They either don't understand your app or they don't understand where and why they need to find. And the third thing is they are not aware of new content. And here I refer more to users that have already used the platform or app once and then are never seen again. And why is that? Because we, as app owners and platform owners, we're not able to let them know on time, in the right way, when to come back. So, if we look at it, the first problem is more of a user acquisition issue, and if we put it in a funnel. The second problem that users come and can't find content is more of an onboarding issue. And the last one is engagement, which I see more as a long-term life cycle issue. And with that, I will talk mainly about onboarding and engagement, these two topics. So, to kind of isolate it and specify, we're looking at two things. How do you identify the best content on a per user base? And when I say on a per user base, I mean my interests as a person of a certain age, from a certain country, with certain languages, are different from anyone here in the audience. Every one of us has a different type of interest and expectations when coming into an app. And with that in mind, an app needs to surface and bring content that is different for each and one of us in order to retain us better. The second problem here is how do we serve our users the most interesting content continuously throughout their life cycle? And I will really go into the nitty-gritties of how to do these two things and how to tackle them. So the first one, as we said, here we go, is an onboarding issue. And the simple truth with onboarding is that we all want to improve user first session on the app. As I said before, most users, after downloading your app, will never be seen again, the vast majority of these users, unless, again, if you're one of the top 3 apps. The other simple truth is that and I'll be interested to hear apps that don't have it, the more users engage, the more likely they are to stay. It's a very simple truth, right? They come on an app, for in this case, this is data from SoundCloud, where I worked for 2 years. We saw very, very direct correlation. The more users listen to music on the first day and on the first week, the more likely they are to be retained. Now, with these two simple truths, how do we give users the best content for them as they enter the app for the first time, right? Because as we said, a generic first experience is generic. Each one of us expects something else when coming on an app, needs something else. And this is a work that we've been doing for a year in order to bring exactly that, to surface users the best content for them. Now, there's a lot behind it. I'll take you guys through it, and I hope I can explain it in a very clear and simple way. Every app, or almost every app, has these 4 user-facing features. A feed, we know it on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Simple feed with content. Notifications, which has a little star next to it because it's the only tool that allows communication with users outside the app. Home experience, which can be a combination of a feed with suggested content and different stuff, and suggested content. Some kind of algorithm that figures out, here, this is content that you might find interesting. Generally speaking, most apps have at least one of these experiences, if not all of them. On the other hand, every app, and that's every app out there, has access to these predictors, to these technical details about the user. Their country, their language, the device OS, their platform, and if you make it part of the sign-up process, also gender and age as the user reports. That's without even going into more sophisticated ability to understand a user if all of a sudden you have access to their Facebook, for instance. If they sign up with Facebook, you have a lot more information. So I'm talking about quite a simple amount of information. Now, how do we take these predictors, all these little factors that we know about a user once they download the app, and impact the user-facing features? What we did at SoundCloud is that we built a predictive model on the client. The predictive model sits on the app, and as the user downloads the app, takes all these predictors, runs them, and with a very, very high percentage, manages to define what is the music interest that this user has. One person might prefer country, another one rock, another one electronic music. But what we found out is that if we look at all these very technical predictors, we can know with a very high probability what you are interested in terms of music and music genres. Now, that might be quite detached. How can you know from a device OS and a country what I'm interested in? How can we know whether someone in France is interested in rock or in electronic music? Well, if you look at all these together, you kind of start understanding that these give us an insight into the class and culture and the economical standard of this person. And all these have a high correlation with music taste. So what we did is that as we put this predictive model on the client and start running it in the background, the feed of the user and their home experience on their first visit is already changing. The result that I will get when looking at the feed and the home experience will be different from each and every one on the audience. Each one of us will get a different type of home experience. At the same time, we have a more complicated predictive model running on the back end. It takes a longer time. It's a batch job that runs once a day. It cannot do it on the fly as the user download the app. But then, the day after, this predictive model can talk to the notification system and send a much better notification than the one we had before. A user comes on an app for the first time, looks for something on it, doesn't matter, a type of content, and then gets an important email, and gets out of the app. In most cases in the past, we would know only this specific interaction that the user had before. But here, because we have a predictive model running on the back end, it's able to tell us, okay, this user interacted with this, but I'm looking also at all these other predictors. And these tell me that you should let this user know about this sale or this product that we're selling, or this type of music, or this friend that you can suggest to them. So this system altogether allows us to really impact the first days of a user engagement with the app. Sorry, I think the battery is a bit low. Now, this all is there in order to tackle onboarding issues. Day 0, as you say, the first day, the first week of a user lifecycle. But once the user gets into the habit of using the app, again, we still have to tackle the issue of how do we bring them from using it once a week to 2 times a week, to 3 times a week and more. How do we make sure that they really get into the habit of using the app? So let's start again with a few simple truths. Simple truth number 1, users are more likely to engage with new content, but in a known context. And I see that issue all the time from marketing and product departments that want to let their user know that there is new content on their platform, that there is something happening, come back to us, come use our platform. But then, just like with this tweet that SoundCloud received, we need, as apps and platform, to balance new content with a known context. If this user receives a notification about Drake the artist, the rapper, and they don't care about Drake, they never follow Drake, they never listen to a track by Drake, SoundCloud just send a generic notification, that will be the end result. Well, that's the worst case, but disengagement, basically. Delete the app. What we need to always do is to balance a known context, an artist the user already followed in the SoundCloud example, or someone they know, together with a new piece of information. The second simple truth is that interaction with app content increasingly happens outside the app. And by that I mean 2 main things. One is the very obvious. A lot of content lives on the main social platforms. As we know them all. Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and Pinterest. Depends on your generation and age. Probably you use differently those different apps. But also a lot of the interaction can happen outside with push notification, for instance, or with email notifications, SMS even. So how do we, as platform owners, make sure that this content that is new to our platform and starts going externally still brings the user back to our app, where we can drive value out of them? Which brings us to how do we surface users the most interesting content? How do I find personalized content for each and every user and bring it to them? Now, as I said before, notifications is a wonderful tool. And why is that? Because it allows users to interact with your app while not being on your app. And that's a unique channel to discuss with to approach users. And what we'll do now is I would like to take you a little bit through how to use notifications in such a way that we don't only let the user and remind the user that your app is there, but also makes it personalized and bring it to them that the content on your app, on your platform, is for their personal interest. So the first thing is the time element. When do we send a notification to a user? The second thing is a frequency. How many notifications we send to a user? A 16-year-old teenager living in New York is used, and I can tell you that for sure, is used to much more push notifications a day than a 60-year-old living in Berlin, where I live. Their perception and interaction with apps are completely different. One might want to receive an email once a week with all digested content together. The other one doesn't mind if you bombard with 8 push notifications a day. How do we make sure that frequency is relevant on a per user base. Because what would happen is that if we start sending too much notifications to a user, is that they will simply either delete the app, which is the worst case, and completely disengage, or just turn off push notifications or email notifications. And then we lost the whole channel of approaching them. So the issue of frequency is extremely important. This data is from SoundCloud, and with that we really saw that users that unsubscribe are basically much more less likely to engage significantly. And the second thing is, what do we let them know about, right? There is new content happening on your platform. Something new happened. There is something that you think that they would be interested in, would bring them back. How do we use this content to bring them in on a per user level? And again, I'll take the same kind of model that I used before. User facing, we have these channels: emails, push, in-app, SMS as well, and we can also talk about retargeting through Facebook or Instagram ads. But as a whole, under the control of your app is email, push, and in-app. And separately, within the app is Notification Center, where notifications can live separately. So these are kind of like the features that reach out to users. Now, usually you have a notification system that sits on the back end and is able to send the notifications to the users. What we did is that we built a notification database behind this notification system. And this notification system with the database preserves at all times the preferences that the user allowed us. If a user opted out of emails, we shouldn't send them emails. In some countries, that could be completely illegal. On the other side, we have a content ranker. That means that every piece of content that lives on the platform receives a score on a per user base. If we take the Facebook example, an image that is posted by my sister, let's say, would have for me a much higher ranking than a picture posted by someone from high school that I haven't talked to in 10 years. Right? So that's exactly what we did. We created a content ranker that gives every user a score for every content that lives on their feed that is possible to send to them. And the second thing is, as we talked before about frequency, is rate limit. How many notifications we send? Do we send an email every day? Do we send 8 push notifications a day? And in order to inform this decision of rate limit, we looked at two things. A, we built a machine learning churn prediction. What does that mean? It means that there's a model that runs daily and looks at the entire user base. It looks at the entire user base and looks at the engagement of each and every user. And at the end of every job, it able to surface and give me back, as a system, give me back a list of all users that are likely to churn in the coming 24 hours. Obviously, if there's a user that has a 99% probability of churning, even if I know they don't like notifications, I'm still going to send them notifications because it's kind of my last chance before they churn and disappear forever. And this algorithm runs and learns every single time how it performed, and so if it managed, for instance, to re-engage the user with the content it sent. It learns from it and applies it the day after. With it, we have a system that is called notification engagement. What does that mean? Same thing, a regression model that looks at all the possible notifications that can be sent to a user, and from them decides which one is the most likely for the user to engage with. And as I said, the example from before, we'll choose in the Facebook example, we'll choose the picture that my sister posted over the picture of some high school friend that I haven't talked to in years. Because I will be much more likely to re-engage with the app through this notification. All these together, being brought into the notification system database, brought us to this. A 25% decrease in direct opens and 15% increase in app opens. Now, that's For those of you that are in the growth area and worked with notifications, these are incredible numbers. Increasing direct open by 25% is that's the highest number I've ever seen managing to increase. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen over a month. But through a few iterations and working on that, we manage with these prioritized notifications that are smart and look at what the user is doing, bring user engagement to the next level. So to kind of summarize everything around notification, and these are a few rules that we've established around notifications, is that no generic notifications. If I send a notification, it better be something good. It better be something of interest to the user. Prioritization of notification is always preferred, if you can. It costs. It costs in data and engineering resources and being able to think and promote these things. But if you have the reach, it's definitely worth it. And while we want a strict rate limit, I would always rather send too little than too many notifications. If you are able to bring in an informed decision to the system on whether to send a notification or not, and for instance, in the example of a user that is likely to churn, would send a notification, then that's kind of a case to not be too strict. Another point is that we added opt-in and opt-out and engagement with notification as team KPIs. That enabled us to really keep our finger in the water and know at all times how we're doing with notification and whether we are in the right directions or not. And last but not least, digested notifications, which I talked a little bit about. Digested notifications is being able to send a bunch of pieces of information to a user, right? All in one notification. It depends on the context and depends on what you're promoting. I would recommend it, but it needs to be done right and thoughtfully. So these are kind of like the 5 rules that we've established around notifications. And lastly, as I said before, I would like to talk a little bit about organization and how we set our organization in such a way to really drive our growth and product to the next level. Now, to be completely honest, it didn't happen for no reason. These are 2 KPIs, company KPIs that we had around engagement and subscription, extremely important ones. And as you can see, at this specific period in time, it didn't go very well. We had a bunch of problems in our product, and we had to sit down and tackle them as a company. Now, when we got out of this crisis, because these are graphs that no company likes to see, we sat down again, the entire organization, and we thought, how can we restructure ourselves in such a way that we will be able to counter situations like this better? We had a few exercises, but this is kind of the way I like to think about it. These are, let's say, 4 of the marketing is not there, so I won't say the most important, but these are 4 very important teams in every app company. You have a growth element, you have a product and design, engineering, of course, and data. And each one of these teams has a different focus. Growth will almost always be focused on impact. How can we drive more user engagement, more user retention? Product and design will almost always be more focused on user experience. How do we create valuable products and features? Engineering, from what I've seen so far, on stability and quality of code, and data on analyzing reality. Now, these kind of premises, this starting point for teams define how they behave. And what could also go wrong is that teams start doing things that they shouldn't do. When product and design start fearing change and not wanting to change the app and the experience of the app, you're basically stopping being agile. You stop being able to change your app and yourself according to reality. When growth has no resources and is not able to deliver, you basically have a useless growth team. And these two factors were crucial at SoundCloud. And then and they brought us to this collapse that you saw before in engagement. So after that, what we decided is to bring the growth organization into the product. Now, I know there are different ways to do it. Every company should decide for itself. But we decided that growth will bring the mentality of impact into the product and will allow us to move the product forward. While product will be able to bring much more resources and long-term thinking into the growth mentality. That happened about a year and a half ago. And the results that we saw from that were excellent, basically. Really, growth managed to shake up the product organization in a very positive way, while the product organization was able to really benefit from the growth mentality of go get, experiment, try new things, and see what worked for our users. That's it. So just a few words to summarize. Growth hacks are great, but they can be short-lived and potentially impact other KPIs. Onboarding is a continuous effort. What I showed you here is a step, one step that took half a year, but it's a step that is part of a larger a process of always iterating on your onboarding. Do not abuse your features and notifications, something that I see all the time. Remember that once you lose a user, it's very hard to get them back. Personalization is the key, but it's expensive, so you have to measure it. Measure, measure, and measure. Always try to take decisions based on measures. And structure your organization in a way that would support all your main efforts. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was great. Questions? I'm sure they are. Okay. Okay, it seems it's crystal clear. Okay.
Hi. Let's say I have downloaded a newspaper app. When you first open the app, you have two options. Either there is a page where you choose your interests and the country and the language, or you can have a predictive algorithm which will, based on my mobile, my country, okay. After this, they will show me a feed with the news based on my interests. Mm-hmm. Which is the best way to have the user choose their interests, and this way you will have the best content delivered to the user, or for a best user experience, you let the algorithm choose which feed will show to the user.
Yes, that's a good question. I'm not able to answer black and white what is better for a specific app. I think
your experience.
I think it simply depends on the market and on the type of users and, of course, the kind of app that you're running. You gave an example before, right, of a specific app. What was it?
I don't know, Google News feeds.
Google News feed. If you're Google and you have the ability to deliver and build these kind of systems, then yes, absolutely, I would do that. And it's not by coincidence that you see that all the major big apps that have the resources of building proper data teams and supporting them with engineering basically do that.
It's not a good example, Google, because Google already knows everything about you. Let's say other app. A smaller company, a smaller app.
Again, I can say some companies decide to take the user through this choosing experience, which has its benefit, definitely. It makes the user engage with the app. It makes the user feel that they take the decision and not an app takes the decision or some algorithm. Makes it more personal in a way. On the other hand, as you said, we can bring an immediate user experience. It really depends on the case. I wouldn't be able to say a clear yes or no for any of them.
Okay, thanks.
Do you see a difference between, let's say, platforms like iStock Photo or, I don't know, it's the Video Hive, for example, for professionals, right there, do you need this kind of, I don't know, understanding what the user wants? Because, as you said, those platforms let you choose from the beginning what you're interested in. So, okay, if it's, I don't know, for making money, for productivity, for so on, I don't think I need all these. But
yeah, maybe you don't need to start building predictive, expensive and complicated predictive models on the fly on the app. On the other hand, if you have on the back-end system a predictive model that runs, and even though we know you're interested specifically in category B, if I can find maybe content that could be recommended to you from a different category, from a different bucket, that's something that could bring more value to the user and therefore more value to the app as well.
Okay. Okay, over there.
Hi. In making these changes, when you saw the downline, did you just brainstorm on different stuff you can do, or were you influenced also by different theories that you can find out there? And I'll name only one. There's a book called Hooked, How to Build Habit-Forming Products. And it's similar to what you said in the trigger part. Notifications actually are triggers for this type of thinking.
Okay, wait. So there's the first part of the question was about the organization and the organizational changes, and the other one was about notifications.
The main question is if when you did this kind of changes, are you influenced about theories on this kind of stuff, or you simply try and test and see what happens?
No, absolutely. In the company there was a bunch of us that were product managers and growth hackers and different people with different approaches that obviously read quite a substantial amount of literature on it. We had a discussion and we all knew also what works generally in the company and what doesn't. So we had to create some kind of a version that works in our case and for our company, for our teams, for the way we're structured and the resources that we have. So we had a few brainstorming sessions. We brought input from all across the organization, from developers and designers and marketers. And all together we kind of found a structure that we found is most impactful and beneficial for us.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much, NOAM. So
Thank
nice
you
to
very
have
much.
you here.
Thank you, everyone.